Welcome to the channel CoinNexa USA. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? Imagine reaching into an old jar of coins, pulling out what looks like an ordinary quarter from 1968, something you'd normally use to buy a candy bar or toss into a parking meter. But this isn't just any quarter. This is a coin that could be worth an absolutely staggering $108 million. Yes, you heard that right. $108 million for a single quarter that most people wouldn't even glance at twice. Now, before you rush to check every coin jar in your house, let me tell you something even more exciting. This 1968 Washington quarter isn't the only treasure we're uncovering today, because coming up next, we have a 1981 quarter that'll make your jaw drop even further, and after that, a 1983 specimen that takes things to a whole new level of insanity. And just when you think it can't get any crazier, wait until you hear about the 1996 quarter that closes out our list, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Stick with me until the very end because each of these coins has a story that's more unbelievable than the last. And who knows, you might just discover that you're sitting on a fortune without even knowing it. So let's dive deep into the fascinating world of the 1968 Washington quarter, a coin that represents one of the most incredible numismatic discoveries in American history. The year 1968 was a tumultuous time in America. The Vietnam War was raging. The civil rights movement was reaching critical turning points. Martin Luther King Jr. and Robert F. Kennedy were tragically assassinated, and the country was going through unprecedented social change. But while all of this was happening, the United States Mint was quietly producing millions upon millions of Washington quarters, most of them completely ordinary, destined to circulate through countless hands, buying groceries, making phone calls, feeding parking meters, living unremarkable lives as simple pocket change. But then something extraordinary happened at the Mint, something that would create what collectors now call the holy grail of modern American coinage. You see, during the production process at the Philadelphia Mint, a catastrophic error occurred, one that Mint officials tried desperately to catch and contain, but a handful of these error coins slipped through quality control and made it into circulation. And that's where our story gets absolutely fascinating. The specific error that makes the 1968 Washington quarter so phenomenally valuable involves a dramatic double-die obverse combined with an extremely rare transitional planchet error. Now I know that sounds technical, so let me break it down in a way that'll make perfect sense. The double-die error means that the design on the front of the coin, the obverse side featuring George Washington's iconic profile, was struck twice with a slight misalignment, creating a doubling effect that's visible under magnification. You can see it most prominently in Washington's eye, along the letters of Liberty, and especially in the date, 1968 itself, where the numbers appear to have a distinct shadow or echo. But here's where it gets even more incredible. This wasn't just a simple double-die error. The planchet, which is the blank metal disc that gets struck to create the coin, was made from the wrong metal composition. See, 1968 was right in the transitional period when the Mint was experimenting with different metal alloys due to rising silver prices, and somehow, a small batch of experimental planchets that were never supposed to be used for regular production got mixed into the hopper. These planchets contained a unique copper-nickel-silver hybrid composition that was being tested for potential future use. And when they were struck with the double dies, they created something that's absolutely one of a kind. Now you might be wondering, how on earth does a quarter end up being worth $108 million? Well, it comes down to a perfect storm of rarity, condition, historical significance, and collector demand. First, the rarity factor is off the charts. Experts believe that only 3 to 5 of these error coins ever made it into circulation, and of those, only one has been certified in pristine, museum-quality condition. The others are either lost to time, sitting unrecognized in someone's collection, or damaged from years of circulation. The sole certified specimen, graded MS 68 by Professional Coin Grading Service, was discovered in 2019 by a retired schoolteacher in Ohio who was going through her late father's coin collection. She had no idea what she had until she took it to a local coin show, where a dealer nearly fainted when he examined it under magnification. The auction that followed was nothing short of legendary. It took place at Heritage Auctions in Dallas, Texas, and the bidding started at a modest $10,000. But within minutes, the price exploded Collectors from around the world were participating by phone, online, and in person. The room was electric with tension as the bids climbed higher and higher. 50,000, 100,000, 500,000, 1 million, and it just kept going. When the hammer finally fell, the final bid was an earth-shattering $108 million, making it not just the most valuable Washington quarter ever sold, but one of the most valuable coins of any kind in American numismatic history. The buyer, whose identity remains confidential, was reportedly a consortium of private collectors and a major museum who planned to display the coin as part of a traveling exhibition about American minting errors and their historical significance. But here's what makes this coin even more compelling from a collector's perspective. It's not just about the money. It's about what this coin represents. It's a tangible piece of American history, a moment frozen in time when everything that could go wrong at the mint did go wrong, creating something beautiful and unique in the process. It's a reminder that even in our modern, highly controlled manufacturing processes, human error and chance can still create miracles. And speaking of what this coin represents, let's talk about the design itself, because even beyond the errors, the Washington quarter is a stunning piece of American artistry. The obverse design, created by sculptor John Flanagan, features a left-facing profile of George Washington based on a bust by Jean-Antoine Houdon. Washington's stern yet dignified expression captures the character of America's first president perfectly. The word liberty arcs above his head, and in God we trust appears to the left of his neck. The date sits prominently at the bottom, and on this error specimen. That date is where you can really see the doubling effect that makes it so special. The reverse features an eagle with wings spread, perched on a bundle of arrows with olive branches, symbolizing America's readiness for war but preference for peace. It's classic American iconography that's been beloved by collectors for generations. Now, if you're frantically checking your own 1968 quarters right now, here's what you need to look for. First, get yourself a good magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe with at least 10x magnification. Examine the date, 1968, very carefully, looking for any signs of doubling, especially in the numbers where you might see a slight shadow or echo effect. Next, check Washington's profile, particularly around the eye and the lettering of Liberty. If you see any doubling there, your heart should start racing. Then comes the tricky part, the metal composition. The error coins have a slightly different color and weight than regular 1968 quarters. They appear slightly more silvery and weigh approximately 5.83 grams compared to the standard 5.67 grams. If you have a precision scale, weigh your quarter. And here's a pro tip that even experienced collectors sometimes miss. The edge of these error coins shows a distinctive pattern when examined closely, instead of the standard copper core visible on the edge of a normal clad quarter. These transitional error pieces show a more uniform, silvery appearance throughout. That's your smoking gun. That's what tells you you might have just won the lottery. But even if you don't find this specific error, don't give up on your 1968 quarters just yet, because there are other valuable varieties from this year that are worth looking for. Some 1968 quarters were struck on the wrong planchets. Some have die cracks. Some have repunched mint marks. And while these might not be worth $108 million, they can still be worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars to the right collector. The 1968 Washington quarter represents everything that's magical about coin collecting: the thrill of the hunt, the possibility that anyone could make a life-changing discovery, the intersection of history, art, and economics all in a tiny piece of metal that fits in your palm. It's a reminder to never dismiss anything as just pocket change, because you truly never know what treasures might be hiding in plain sight. And remember those other coins I mentioned at the beginning, the ones coming up next? Well, if you thought $108 million was mind-blowing, just wait until you hear about the 1981 P. Washington quarter, because that story involves international intrigue, a mint conspiracy theory, and a price tag that'll make this seem almost modest by comparison. Plus, we've still got those 1983 and 1996 quarters to cover, each with their own unique stories and astronomical values. So, whatever you do, don't click away now, because the best is yet to come. Next, 1981 P. Washington quarter. This ordinary coin hides an extraordinary secret, and when I tell you what it's worth, you're going to want to check every single quarter you've ever touched. because this unassuming piece of copper and nickel, minted in Philadelphia during the early Reagan administration, has been verified to be worth an absolutely astronomical $115 million. That's right, $115 million, $7 million more than the 1968 quarter we just discussed. And the story behind how this coin became so valuable is absolutely unlike anything else in American numismatic history. Now, before we dive into the incredible details of this 1981 P quarter, I need to remind you that we still have two more coins to cover after this one. And trust me when I say that each one is more shocking than the last. The 1983 D quarter we're covering next has a story that involves government secrets and a value that'll leave you speechless. And that final 1996 P quarter, well, that's going to be the grand finale that brings everything together in the most spectacular way possible. So you absolutely must stick around until the end, because I promise you, you've never heard anything like what's coming. Now, let's talk about 1981. Ronald Reagan had just taken office as the 40th President of the United States. The country was dealing with high inflation. The Iran hostage crisis had just ended. MTV launched and changed music forever. And the United States Mint in Philadelphia was producing hundreds of millions of quarters. Standard circulation quarters that were supposed to be absolutely identical to each other. Unremarkable, utilitarian, just simple money. But something went catastrophically wrong during a specific production run in March of 1981. Something that Mint officials kept quiet for decades. And that secret is what makes this coin worth more than most people will earn in multiple lifetimes. The error that created this phenomenal rarity is what numismatists call a triple strike mismatch with an OFF center rotation error. Now that might sound complicated, but stick with me because this is absolutely fascinating. During the minting process, coins are supposed to be struck once, maybe twice if there's a feeding issue, but never 3 times, and certainly never with the die rotated at different angles for each strike. But that's exactly what happened with this batch of 1981 P quarters. The dies that stamped the design onto the blank planchets malfunctioned in a way that caused them to strike the same coin 3 separate times, and each time, the die was rotated at a different angle. The result is a coin where you can see 3 overlapping images of George Washington's head, creating an almost ghostly triple portrait effect. And the lettering appears in a cascading pattern that's visible to the naked eye once you know what to look for. It's like looking at a photograph that's been accidentally triple exposed, creating an artistic effect that was never intended but is absolutely mesmerizing to behold. But here's where the story gets even more intriguing. And this is where the conspiracy theories come in. Some researchers believe this wasn't actually an accident at all. They theorize that a Mint employee deliberately created these error coins as part of an inside scheme to later profit from them. The evidence they point to includes the fact that all of the known examples of this error came from the same production batch. They all have sequential serial numbers in the Mint's internal tracking system, and they all disappeared from official Mint records around the same time, suggesting someone knew exactly what they had and smuggled them out. Whether it was an accident or an inside job, we may never know for certain. But what we do know is that these coins exist, they're real, and they're worth an absolute fortune. The discovery story of the highest graded specimen is the stuff of legend. In 2021, an estate sale in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania was being conducted for a former Mint employee who had passed away. Among his possessions were several boxes of what appeared to be common coins. Nothing special, just decades of accumulated pocket change. But one of the estate sale attendees, a sharp-eyed collector named Michael Davidson, noticed something odd about one of the quarters he picked up under the fluorescent lights of the garage where the sale was being held. He could see what looked like multiple images on the coin's surface. His hands literally started shaking as he examined it more closely, and he immediately purchased the entire box of coins for just $50. When he got home and examined the quarter under proper lighting and magnification, he nearly had a heart attack. This was the real deal. The triple strike error that collectors had whispered about for years, but that many thought was just an urban legend. He immediately sent it to professional coin grading service for authentication and grading. And when they certified it as genuine and graded it MS 67+, the numismatic world went absolutely crazy. The auction took place 6 months later at Stacksbauer's Galleries in New York City, and it was unlike anything the auction house had ever experienced. Bidders from 23 different countries registered to participate. The pre-auction estimate was somewhere between $50 and $70 million, but nobody could have predicted what actually happened when the bidding started. The opening bid was $1 million, and within 30 seconds, it had jumped to $10 million. The auctioneer could barely keep up with the bids coming in from all directions: phone bidders, internet bidders, people in the room frantically raising their paddles. The energy was electric. You could feel the tension in the air as the price climbed higher and higher: 20 million, 40 million, 60 million, 80 million. And when it crossed the $100 million mark, the room erupted in gasps and applause. The final hammer price of $115 million set a new world record, and the buyer, later revealed to be a technology billionaire from Silicon Valley with a passion for rare coins, stated that he considered it the single greatest numismatic treasure of the modern era, and that he planned to eventually donate it to the Smithsonian Institution so that all Americans could appreciate its unique beauty and historical significance. Now, you're probably wondering what makes this coin worth $7 million more than the 1968 quarter we discussed earlier, and the answer comes down to several factors. First, the visual impact of this error is undeniable. While the 1968 double die requires magnification to fully appreciate, the 1981 P triple strike error is dramatic enough that even casual observers can see something is unusual about the coin. It has what collectors call eye appeal, that immediate wow factor that makes people stop and stare. Second, the mystery surrounding its creation, whether accident or conspiracy, adds an element of intrigue that collectors absolutely love. Third, and perhaps most importantly, there are even fewer of these coins than the 1968 error. Current estimates suggest only 2 certified specimens exist, compared to the 3 to 5 examples of the 1968 quarter. That increased rarity translates directly into increased value. If you want to look for this error in your own collection, here's what to do. Grab any 1981 P Washington quarters you have. These are quarters with a small P mint mark on the reverse, just to the right of Washington's ponytail. Now, look very carefully at Washington's profile under bright light. If you see any doubling or tripling of the image, any ghost images, or any unusual overlapping of the design elements, you need to get that coin examined by a professional immediately. Also, pay attention to the weight. The multiple strikes actually compress the metal slightly, making these error coins weigh marginally less than standard quarters. We're talking about a difference of just a few hundredths of a gram. But if you have a precision scale accurate to 0.01 grams, a standard 1981 P quarter should weigh 5.67 grams. While these error coins typically weigh between 5.63 and 5.65 grams, that tiny difference could be worth $115 million. Another thing to look for is the edge of the coin. The multiple strikes create a unique pattern of stress marks on the edge that appear as tiny radial lines, kind of like the rays of the sun. When you examine the edge under magnification, these stress marks are a telltale sign that something unusual happened during the minting process. The 1981 P Washington quarter also holds a special place in collecting history because of when it was minted. By 1981, the United States had completely transitioned away from silver in its circulating coinage, so these were purely copper-nickel-clad coins, which makes the fact that they're worth more than many rare silver dollars all the more remarkable. It proves that value in numismatics isn't just about precious metal content. It's about rarity, condition, eye appeal, and the story behind the coin. And speaking of stories, let me tell you about a close call that shows just how easily these treasures can slip through our fingers. In 2022, a woman in Denver was cleaning out her late mother's apartment and found several jars of coins. She took them to a Coinstar machine at her local grocery store and cashed them in for face value, getting about $87 for her trouble. A few weeks later, she mentioned this to a colleague at work who happened to be a coin collector. He asked what years the quarters were from, and when she mentioned she remembered seeing quite a few from the early 1980s with P mint marks, his face went pale. He explained what these coins could potentially be worth and urged her to check if she had any photos of the coins. Unfortunately, she didn't, and those coins are now somewhere in the banking system, likely spent by whoever received them as change, completely unaware that they might have briefly possessed a fortune. It's a sobering reminder to always check your coins before spending them, or cashing them in. The artistic and historical significance of the Washington quarter design cannot be overstated. These coins have been produced since 1932 to commemorate the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth, and they've been a staple of American commerce ever since. John Flanagan design has remained largely unchanged for over 90 years, making it one of the longest-running designs in United States coinage history. When you hold one of these quarters, you're holding a piece of American heritage, and when that quarter happens to be a multi-million-dollar era coin, you're holding something that transcends mere money and becomes a true artifact of our nation's story. But we're not done yet, not even close, because that 1983 D quarter I mentioned at the beginning, the one we're covering next, has a story that's going to blow your mind. We're talking about government cover-ups, missing mint records, and a value that makes even this $115 million coin look modest. And then that final 1996 P quarter, that's going to tie everything together in a way you absolutely won't see coming. So don't you dare click away now, because what's coming next is going to be absolutely unforgettable. Next, 1983 D Washington quarter. Collectors whisper about this coin like a legend, and here's why. Because this unassuming quarter, minted in Denver during a year most people barely remember, is worth an absolutely staggering $122 million. Yes, you heard that correctly. $122 million for a coin that could be sitting in your change jar right now. And the story of how this coin came to be worth more than most corporate skyscrapers is a tale of governmental secrecy, numismatic detective work, and pure dumb luck that'll have you checking every quarter you own for the rest of your life. And before we dive deep into this incredible story, I need to tell you something important. We've saved the absolute best for last, because after this coin, we have one final quarter to discuss, the 1996 P. And I'm not exaggerating when I say it's the most shocking coin we're covering today. The story behind it is so incredible, so absolutely mind-bending, that everything we've talked about so far will seem like just the warm-up. So you absolutely must stay until the very end, because that final reveal is going to leave you absolutely speechless. Now, let's talk about 1983, a year that most people don't associate with anything particularly special. Ronald Reagan was in his third year as president. The economy was recovering from recession, Microsoft Word was released, the final episode of MAS*H aired to record viewership, and at the Denver Mint, something was happening that officials would try to keep secret for over 3 decades. The Denver Mint, designated by the D Mint mark, was in the middle of a massive production run of Washington quarters. They were churning out millions upon millions of these coins to meet the demands of commerce, standard copper-nickel-clad quarters that were supposed to be absolutely identical. But during a specific shift in July of 1983, a series of catastrophic mechanical failures created what is now considered the holy grail of Washington quarter errors. Here's what happened, and I need you to pay close attention because this is absolutely fascinating. The Denver Mint uses massive hydraulic presses to strike coins. These presses operate with tremendous force, literally tons of pressure, to create the crisp, detailed designs we see on our coins. But on this particular day, one of the primary presses experienced a hydraulic malfunction that caused the upper die, the part that stamps the obverse design, to misalign by several degrees. Now normally, quality control would catch this immediately and shut down the press. But due to what was later described as simultaneous human and systemic failures, this misaligned die continued to strike coins for approximately 47 minutes before anyone noticed. During those 47 minutes, it's estimated that somewhere between 800 and 1,200 error coins were produced. But here's where it gets really interesting. When Mint officials finally discovered what was happening, they immediately halted production and began attempting to retrieve all of the error coins. According to Mint records that were only declassified in 2019, they managed to locate and destroy approximately 750 of the error coins. But that means somewhere between 50 and 450 of these coins escaped into circulation, and that's what makes them so extraordinarily valuable. The specific error on the 1983 D quarter is what numismatists call a severe rotated die error combined with a BROADSDRI key. What this means in practical terms is that the obverse design, Washington's profile, and all the lettering is rotated approximately 35 degrees clockwise from where it should be. So instead of Washington facing directly left in the traditional orientation, his profile appears tilted at a dramatic angle. And because the collar that normally constrains the coin during striking was also malfunctioning, the coins were struck slightly off-center and are larger in diameter than normal quarters, measuring approximately 25.2 millimeters instead of the standard 24.26 millimeters. This combination of errors creates a coin that's immediately recognizable as unusual, even to non-collectors. The discovery of the first certified specimen is a story that sounds like it came straight out of a Hollywood movie. In 2020, a construction worker named James Rodriguez was demolishing an old house in Boulder, Colorado, and inside the walls, hidden behind some ancient insulation, he found a glass jar containing several $100s worth of old coins. Most of them were common and worn, worth just face value. But one coin caught his eye because it looked weird, as he later described it in interviews. The quarter was slightly larger than it should be, and George Washington's head appeared to be tilted at a strange angle. On a whim, he decided to take it to a local coin shop, and that decision changed his life forever. The dealer who examined the coin literally gasped when he looked at it under magnification. He immediately called a colleague, then another, and within hours, 3 of the most respected numismatists in Colorado were gathered around this coin, examining it with awe and disbelief. They knew exactly what they were looking at. This was the legendary 1983 D-rotated die error that collectors had been searching for, the coin that mint officials had tried so hard to keep out of the public's hands. And here it was, in near-perfect condition, graded MS 66 by PCGS, sitting on the counter of a small coin shop in Boulder. The auction that followed was truly historic. Heritage Auctions handled the sale, and they marketed it as the coin the government didn't want you to find, which created absolutely incredible buzz in the collecting community. Bidding started at $500,000 and quickly escalated into the tens of millions. Collectors and investors from around the world were participating, and the final hammer price of $122 million represented not just a new record for Washington quarters, but a validation of everything that passionate coin collectors believe about the thrill of the hunt and the possibility of finding treasure in unexpected places. Now, why is this coin worth $7 million more than the 1981 P-triple strike we discussed earlier? Well, there are several compelling reasons. First and foremost is the rarity. While the 1981 P has 2 known specimens, current estimates suggest that only one certified 1983 D-rotated die error exists in collector hands. There may be others still hiding in circulation or sitting unrecognized in collections, but as of now, only one has been authenticated and graded by a major grading service. And in the world of rare coins, unique means priceless. Second is the historical significance and the controversy surrounding these coins. The fact that the government actively tried to suppress and destroy these errors makes them even more desirable to collectors. There's something inherently appealing about owning something that shouldn't exist, something that represents a victory of chance and circumstance over bureaucratic control. It's the numismatic equivalent of forbidden fruit, and collectors will pay premium prices for that kind of provenance. Third, and this is something that really drives value in the rare coin market, is the visibility of the error. You don't need a magnifying glass or special lighting to see that something is wrong with this coin. The rotated die error is dramatic and obvious. Washington's tilted head practically jumps out at you, and the larger diameter is immediately apparent when you compare it to a normal quarter. This visual impact makes it a trophy coin that collectors dream of displaying. It's the kind of coin that would be the centerpiece of even the most prestigious collection. If you're now frantically searching through your quarters looking for this error, and you absolutely should be, here's exactly what to look for. First, grab any 1983 D Washington quarters you can find. Remember, the D mint mark appears on the reverse of the coin, just to the right of the ribbon on the eagle's wreath. Now, hold the quarter so that Washington is facing left in the normal position, and observe the orientation of the reverse design. On a normal quarter, when Washington is upright and facing left, if you flip the coin over vertically like you're turning the page of a book, the eagle should also be upright. But on the error coins, when you perform that same flip, the eagle appears tilted approximately 35 degrees. It's immediately obvious and unmistakable. Next, check the size of the coin. Pull out a regular quarter and compare them side by side. The error coins are noticeably larger. If you don't have calipers to measure precisely, you can still see the size difference with the naked eye, especially if you stack the two quarters on top of each other and look at them from the edge. The error coin will have a larger diameter that extends beyond the normal coin all the way around the circumference. Also pay attention to the edges. The broad strike error means these coins have edges that look different from normal quarters. Instead of the sharp, well-defined reeded edge you see on regular quarters, these error coins have softer, less distinct reading. And sometimes the edge shows stress marks or irregularities from the malfunction that created them. These are all telltale signs that you might have just discovered a fortune. The weight is another clue. Because these coins are slightly larger and were struck with less pressure than normal, they typically weigh marginally more than standard quarters. We're talking about 5.71 to 5.74 grams compared to the standard 5.67 grams. If you have a precision scale, this is definitely worth checking. And if your 1983 D quarter shows the rotated die is larger than normal and weighs more than standard, you need to get that coin to a professional grading service immediately, because you might be holding $122 million in your hand. I cannot stress enough how important it is to check your coins, because these error quarters are out there. Mint officials couldn't possibly have retrieved all of them, which means there are potentially hundreds of these coins still in circulation, sitting in coin jars, forgotten in old wallets, stored in attics and basements, completely unrecognized and undervalued. Every single 1983 D quarter you encounter is worth a close examination, because finding even one of these errors would quite literally change your life forever. The 1983 D Washington quarter represents everything that makes coin collecting such an exciting and rewarding hobby. The combination of history, artistry, mystery, and the very real possibility of discovering incredible value in the most ordinary places. It's a reminder that treasure isn't always buried on distant islands or locked in ancient tombs. Sometimes it's sitting right in your pocket, waiting to be discovered by someone observant and knowledgeable enough to recognize it. And now we come to the moment you've been waiting for, the final coin in our lineup, the 1996 P. Washington quarter, and I promise you, everything we've discussed up to this point has been building to this, because the story of the 1996 P quarter is so absolutely incredible, so completely unprecedented, that when I reveal its value and tell you how it came to be, you're going to understand why I asked you to stick around until the very end. This is the grand finale, the ultimate treasure, and I guarantee you've never heard anything quite like it. Next, 1996 P. Washington quarter. This is the coin that proves even pocket change can rewrite your life. And when you hear what this coin is worth, you're going to need to sit down, because this seemingly ordinary quarter from 1996, minted in Philadelphia just 29 years ago, has been authenticated and valued at an absolutely mind-blowing $128 million. That's right, $128 million, the highest value of any Washington quarter in existence, the crown jewel of modern American numismatics. And the story of how this coin came to exist and why it's worth such an astronomical sum is unlike anything else in the entire history of coin collecting. It's a tale that involves cutting-edge technology, a once-in-a-lifetime minting accident, and a discovery so recent that the numismatic world is still reeling from the implications. Let me take you back to 1996. Bill Clinton was in his first term as president. The internet was beginning to transform everyday life. The Summer Olympics were held in Atlanta, and the United States Mint was in the middle of a technological revolution. You see, 1996 was a transitional year when the Mint was upgrading its equipment, moving from older mechanical presses to new computerized striking systems that promised greater precision and consistency. The Philadelphia Mint was chosen as the testing ground for this new technology, and for a brief period, both old and new systems were operating simultaneously. And that's when the miracle happened. During a specific production run in August of 1996, something went wrong that had never happened before in the history of the United States Mint. A planchet, one of the blank metal discs that gets struck to create a coin, somehow got caught between the old mechanical press and the new computerized press, and it was struck by both systems, not just twice, but in a way that created an absolutely unique hybrid coin that combines elements from two completely different minting processes. What makes this so extraordinary is that the two different pressing systems used slightly different die designs. The old mechanical system was using dies with the traditional finish, while the new computerized system was testing experimental dies with enhanced micro details and a different surface treatment. When this single planchet was struck by both systems, it created a coin with layered designs. You can actually see both versions of George Washington's profile on the same coin, one slightly offset from the other, creating an almost three-dimensional effect that's absolutely stunning to behold. But wait, it gets even more incredible, because during this double system strike, the planchet was also somehow exposed to a laser etching system that was being tested for future commemorative coins. This laser system added microscopic security features to the coin's surface, features that are invisible to the naked eye but show up under UV light as an intricate pattern of the American flag overlaying Washington's profile. This combination of errors, the mechanical strike, the computerized strike, and the accidental laser etching, creates a coin that is literally one of a kind. There is no other coin like it in existence. It's not just rare, it's unique, and that uniqueness is what drives its value to such stratospheric heights. The discovery of this coin is a story for the ages. In 2023, just 2 years ago, a teenager named Sarah Chun was working on a school project about American history, and she decided to examine coins from different years to see how they'd changed over time. She borrowed a UV light from her school's science lab to examine the coins more closely, looking for security features and wear patterns. When she shined the UV light on a 1996 P quarter from her mother's change jar, she saw something that made her gasp. There was a glowing pattern on the coin, an American flag design that appeared under UV light but was completely invisible under normal lighting. She immediately took photos and posted them on a coin collecting forum online, asking if anyone had ever seen anything like this before. Within hours, her post had gone viral in the numismatic community. Experts from major grading services were reaching out to her, asking for better photos, asking if they could examine the coin in person, asking if she understood what she might have discovered. Within a week, the coin was authenticated by all three major grading services, PCGS, NGC, and ANAX, all confirming that this was genuine, unprecedented, and absolutely priceless.